Hey guys, how's it going? Firebox here. There's a few things I want to talk about today. The first thing is that they're going to be testing starter gear only lobbies for about 3 days, starting 9 p.m. EST tonight. This means that you're only going to be able to enter normals with starter gear, junk quality specifically, so gray gear, white gear, etc. cannot be used. They might adjust it, who knows if they will or not, but that is something to keep in mind. With that said, if you want to use your gear, you're now going to have to go to High Roller, but the ante is going to be adjusted to 0 gold. I personally would like to see the High Roller ante stay at 0 gold, because I like the lobbies to fill as quick as possible, and the reality is most players do not want to spend the 75 or 100 gold to enter the match, meaning that most players end up staying in normals because it just ends up being more profitable in the long run. With that said, I want to give some of my own personal opinion on both the normal and the high roller dungeons. First things first, I think for normals, this is a really great time for people that have been struggling to extract, to play. You're going to have 3 days where gear doesn't matter. You're not going to get rushed down by people in, full purple, legendary, ruby, silver type gear. But that said, I am curious what Iron Mace ends up deciding to do with this. I would prefer to see at least white or green gear be utilized here, because certain classes, junk quality-wise, as far as starter gear goes, are just strictly stronger, in my opinion, than other classes. For example, I think Rogue starter kit is quite bad. Your starter dagger is not great, even for clearing PvE. And compared to some other classes, such as Barb, that has such a high health total, it's going to be really hard for you to have fair fights in that regard. It's true, as a rogue, you can just run away, but I think there are imbalances in different classes as far as the starter gear goes that could be alleviated with the introduction of, again, white or that green gear. Now, as far as high roller goes, I would like to see the gold change stay even after the wipe happens. I don't think that we need a gold fee, especially with the introduction of the adventure point system. And my hope is that the high roller lobbies begin to fill more quickly, which is going to result in just a generally better experience because it makes teaming up a lot harder outside of the game because you can't get into lobbies with the same people. And if you do get a bad game, you don't also lose 75 gold on top of the gear that you're already risking. That said, there are a few things in High Roller I would like to see changed. Number one, some of the spawns are really bad. The one that spawns in the middle zone, right behind the wooden barricade, that spawn can get spawn rushed by the person up top, where you don't even really get a chance to play the game. And if you're not really quick, you might not even get out of that spot before the person up top has already spawn rushed you. There's also another spawn, the one that spawns, I think it's the bottom left quadrant. That's all the way at the back of the hallway. And in order to get through, not only do you have to go through multiple areas with a lot of mob density, but it will also frequently spawn you on the opposite side of the circle, meaning that not only do you have no time to loot, but you have to very quickly clear these mobs. Otherwise, you're going to be also inside of the circle. And for new players, especially, it's going to be quite hard to survive. Some spawns in High Roller are just strictly better than others. And if you get a good spawn, like the prison that has those wooden crates that have really good valuables in them, it's easy to make your gold back and pretty good profit in High Roller. But if you get one of those bad spawns, you might just be fighting the circle the whole time, or you might not really get a chance to loot, which I think is a problem in itself, and I hope that we see either some kind of map changes or spawn changes to help alleviate the imbalances that has caused. The second thing for High Roller I want to mention, that I know this technically counts for normals too, but the ranged throwable spam is really becoming an issue. People bringing in 20, 30 Francisca axes, throwing knives is not fun to deal with, and I feel like it's more of a problem in High Roller, because that's where you're really finding the people that are making sure that they do everything they can not to die. Even myself, I felt inclined to do it. When I go into normals, I usually limit myself to like maybe 4 or 6 axes or throwing knives. In High Roller, though, if another person has more throwables than you do, you just lose that fight. And that's kind of a problem. So that said, I would like to see a limit on the number of consumables slash throwables that you're allowed to bring into the dungeon. I know Iron Mace has mentioned this, but I really would like to see something like this sooner rather than later, so I don't have a barbarian throwing 30 throwing axes that all deal really high damage right at me. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about it to counter it. You just have to hope and pray that they don't hit you. The third thing is the very middle quadrant, I think, is really range favored. If you're a ranger and you place down a bunch of traps there and you happen to get the final circle, you're going to be at a huge advantage, and it's going to be really hard for melee classes to ever get up to you. I personally would like to see the middle area readjusted, but I also think that the mob density could be reduced in the overall map as well, maybe by 20% or so. That's just kind of a random number, but I do think it's too high. Most players are just running past mobs and never really fighting them, which ends up resulting in kind of these scenarios where you're trying to go through zones and there's just mobs littered everywhere, stacked on top of each other. Because the loot that they're dropping is not that good, most people are skipping them in favor of going to new rooms and going to where the real loot is, such as those wooden crates that I mentioned about before. The high-level mobs also make range combat stronger, because as a melee user, if you're trying to chase someone who is fast, such as a ranger, and they're also aggroing mobs, the mobs will body block you and will make you unable to fight them. But if you're ranged, you can still fight because you can just shoot past those mobs. So in general, I think this would be a decent change. It would also make people less afraid of going into High Roller and losing their kits. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. For those of you that are wondering, in the background I'm using a dual wield Slayer fighter build with a short sword arming sword combo. It seems pretty decent from what I've seen. Of course, if you're in High Roller, the only way to play truly is having 20 Francisca axes to throw at other people. I'm not going to be posting for about a week because of the holidays coming up, but coming around Monday, I should be back to play the wipe and try out the new content that's added. I am curious what you guys think about these changes and what you're looking forward to in the next wipe. Feel free to leave those in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. I'll leave the rest of the PvP here. I want to thank Kid Brutal and Oduck for supporting this video, alongside all of our other members. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the video.